Hello, welcome to the inaugural episode, or the pilot episode, we're still figuring that out, The Wannabe Film Class. I am your host, Ben Bellevue. I'm joined by Chloe Naylor.
Hello, how are you?
Yep, there we go. And by Logan Wilkinson?
Nailed it, crushed it. Hey there, hi there, ho there. How's the internet doing?
We can see which person here has experience doing a lot of podcasts and which don't. Me and Chloe. Yeah, so for everyone joining us for our first episode, this is the Wannabe Film Class. We are a podcast where each week we talk about a movie that is important to us. Each month is themed after whatever we want it to be themed after. The current month, our theme is movies that came out in the 2000s. So that is a movie that released in the year 2000 through the year 2009. If it came out in 2010 or later, that's not a 2000s movie. Don't argue with me. So this first episode is talking about one of my favorite movies from the 2000s, which is Mamma Mia, and I'm sure many other people's favorite movies. Before we dive into that, does anyone want to say anything about themselves? Let the audience get to know them. Where might people know you from? How about we start with Chloe?
Start with me. You probably know me on Twitter at EchoClo as the weird robot girl who's obsessed with General Grievous. That's me.
Will we have a robot-themed month? Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Can't wait.
Yep. And Logan, who are you?
Yeah, hi. You can find me at LeftyLogie on Twitter. You probably know me from my 3.5 years with RationalPassions.com / where I was a senior editor, did lots of podcasts about the video games and all the good stuff, and also just like existing on the internet, talking about Domino's Pizza a lot, and all that good stuff out there. So it's where you probably find me. Ben, where can they find you from? Where do they know you from?
I'm glad you asked. People might know me from the internet. I don't really have a past like Logan does, or a up-and-comer kind of funny star power that Chloe has. I'm a recent film student graduate from Loyola Marymount University, where I studied screenwriting. So movies are a really big deal for me. I want to work in them, hopefully, one day, maybe. We'll see. It's an industry we got there. So let's kick this all off by talking about Mamma Mia. Mamma Mia is a film that was released in 2008 based on a play that came out in 1999. So it is... How old is that? 20 years old.
20 years.
It's 20 years old. I should have been able to do that math faster. It's really simple math. It's a play that came out in 1999. It's directed by Phillida Lloyd, and she's also the person who directed the play when it originally premiered, and this was her first feature film of all time. Since then, she's gone on to do one other feature film, The Iron Lady, which also stars Meryl Streep, so they've got a tight bond going there. It's also written by Katherine Johnson. She also wrote the play, so you might be noticing a trend here of it's the same people who made the play. And the producer of it is Judy Kramer, who, fun fact, not only was the producer for the play, but this was her original idea. In an interview, she talks about how she was a 25-year-old who had just stopped working as a stage manager, I believe, and she got a small job where they're like, oh, we need you to go pick up, I believe it was Bjorn, who is one of the members of ABBA, and drive him somewhere to meet someone that does music things. I don't know. But while she was there, she became friends with him. She met Benny Anderson. These two people might be switched in reality. I'm forgetting. But she eventually pitched them, and she's like, hey, I have this idea that we take your music and turn it into a jukebox musical. And that's how this all got started. And now she's still the producer after the play, after the first movie, and after the second movie that just came out. The cast is also stacked. In the notes, I just wrote stacked because there's far too many people, and I'm not going to name them all.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, with that said, let's dive into the recap of the movie for anyone who may not remember what happens, may not have seen the movie. You should. It's great. So, I'm going to read through my little recap notes I have, but if anyone wants to cut in and be like, hey, you forgot this important thing, please do. I'm going to feel weird talking by myself for however long this takes.
Okay.
The movie opens with Sophie, played by Amanda Seyfried, on a boat. She's singing I Have a Dream, which is the first ABBA song we hear. You may have guessed that from it all being ABBA songs, but you know. And it's this really cool little cinematic shot where she's taking these 3 letters to a mailbox. There's a cool little a little shot of this very blue, dark, it's night out, and there's this yellow mailbox. Cinematography is cool. I like movies. And she drops these 3 letters in the mailbox addressed to 3 different men, Sam, Harry, and Bill. And then we quickly cut and we meet these three men. Sam is working in an office, and he's doing office-y things, and Bill's also doing that. They do things. And then we have this really cool little title card sequence where we see all three of their faces line up next to each other from their passport IDs, and then a plane fly off. We all get the sense that these three men are coming to whatever the letters have invited them to, but we don't quite know what that is yet, or why. But we learn right after the Mamma Mia title card smashes. And what we learn is that Sophie has invited these three men because she grew up without a father, but from reading her mom's diary, which, questionable, she made a decision.
I don't want to know about that.
Yeah, she brings her friends and she's like, so, I've invited these three guys, one of them is my dad, and here's how I know. This is my mom's diary, and in each of them, she talks about how she fucks them.
Yeah.
And she has so much fun with it, too. They're like, oh, what does ... mean? She's like, my mom got it on. And they're like, oh my god. It is probably more uncomfortable in real life to think about. But in the movie, we sidetrack all of that with a fun song. Honey Honey, which is the first full performance of an ABBA song we see. It's a very good song. Amanda Seyfried is a pretty good singer. I enjoy her performance. Yeah. Did not know that going into this movie. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Pretty good singer is not a description we can use for every actor in this movie. They tried. I appreciate it. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
But
They tried.
That's the thing, right? Like, especially for, like, somebody
Yeah.
like Pierce Brosnan, where it's like, he's very much not a singer, and so it's like, him to be like, I'll try it. Like, I'll try to be something that's very out to my wheelhouse. It's like, I appreciate the effort. Like,
he tried.
he gave it a go.
I think there's a charm to, like, not every person being... It feels more like if our life was a musical, where, instead of being like, oh, every person here is, like, a great musical performer.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, it's like, hey, some people here can't sing, but they're gonna sing because it's about the feeling of the music, not about everyone being, like, a Broadway quality performer. During this Honey Honey sequence, we also meet Donna, who is Sophie's mom, who's Meryl Streep, and the best character in this movie.
Probably.
By
yeah.
far.
Yeah.
In my opinion. And then finally we meet Sophie's fiance, Sky.
Yeah.
Sophie invited the three possible dads to the island under the guise of her wedding. She also didn't tell, which is an actual thing that is happening, but she used it as an excuse to invite them. And she also told them that Donna was the one who's inviting them. So they're all coming under this assumption that Donna, who they've not seen in 20 or so years, is inviting them to her daughter's wedding for some reason. And all of that's a lie. So we meet Sky, the fiance. Sky expresses his desire to not really get married right now, or at least not to get married in the way they are. They have this whole elaborate wedding planned, and Sky, despite clearly loving Sophie, wants to put more of their money towards traveling. So that's a little kernel of details we learn right there. So from there we go on. We meet Donna's trio, who are icons. Just
Yes, this is absolutely true.
they're so good. Donna and the Dynamos
Yes,
are the best part of this.
Yes,
Truly.
unquestionably.
The Holy
I know I
Trinity.
just said Donna's the best character in the movie, but like her entire posse, especially going back and watching this movie knowing how great they are, seeing Sophie and her two friends who kind of just like
They suck.
fade into the back.
whatever.
They barely exist. Beyond the fact that they're there for Sophie to explain what she's doing with her dads in the very beginning of the movie, they barely matter. But Donna and the Dynamos, they matter a lot. So we meet Donna more, because up until then we've only really seen her very briefly. And we meet one of her best friends, Tanya, who is a frequent divorcee and loaded with money. And just, I love Tanya. Tanya's my favorite side character in this movie. Tanya is amazing. And she's played by Christine Baranski, who is an underappreciated actress. So good.
Yeah. Probably,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
And then we also meet Rosie, who is a writer and describes herself as a lone wolf. She's played by Julie Walters. Wow, I can't believe I forgot Julie Walters' name.
my favorite side character in the movie.
That's fair. That is very fair.
Yeah.
Some people may not know because Julie Walters looks very different in this movie from some of her other roles. But Julie Walters plays the mom of the Weasleys. She's Mama Weasley in the Harry Potter
Molly
movies.
Weasley, yeah.
She's Molly Weasley. She's also...
Chloe didn't know. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. That's Molly Weasley. She's also
know that.
Mrs. Bird in the Paddington films. So we have a real connection of some of my favorite things. So from there we learn a bit more about Donna. We learn about how she wants to be making more money because she's running this villa on this little island in Greece called Calicari. And it's supposed to be a hotel that, succeeds, but right now it's really not. She's working all night and all day, every day, as she describes it, which leads us into another song, Money, 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 which is insane because it's basically just Meryl Streep, Julie Walters, and Christine Baranski having a ball on a yacht that is a fantasy sequence of the money they wish they had. Or Donna wishes she had. Tanya might have it. Honestly, Tanya's pretty rich. Yeah. But yeah, so we do that, and then we move on back to Sophie as her fathers are arriving. Her potential fathers are arriving. They're all on the same boat because, coincidentally, Harry and Sam both were running last minute at the exact same pace to the only boat that could take them to Calicari. The only official boat that could take them to Calicari. So instead, they end up on a boat with Bill, who's the third potential father, because he has his own boat, because he's an adventurer. And they all arrive, they meet Sophie, and Sophie sneaks them into this old goat house at the hotel. And they're like, oh, where's our room? And she's like, this is your room. Also, my mom doesn't know you're here. Which, understandably, they are all alarmed by. Especially Sam, who says Donna told him to never speak to her again the last time they saw each other. So that's what you call tea. Yeah. Sophie is a really bad hider, though. Like, she just sucks at it.
Yeah, she's terrible. She's awful. Yeah, it's very atrocious.
5 seconds after they are hidden, essentially 5 seconds after they're hidden by Sophie, Donna just finds out. She goes into the goat house, she hears noise upstairs, she peeks in without them noticing, and is like, oh my god, these are all men I have slept with, and did not expect to see, ever again, in my life. So, Donna spies them, she's alarmed, and we break into the song that is the title of this movie, Mamma Mia, which is great. It's weird. It's shot so strangely.
Yes. But it's one of the best,
so good
musical moments of the entire film, I think. It's such a great, even though it's shot very strange, it's just so well done throughout, I think still.
Yeah. It's one of the only moments you really see Meryl Streep actually dancing in the movie. There's moments where she's in Dancing Queen, she's kind of just bouncing around, but this is a song where there's actual choreography to it, and it feels really cool. It feels like, in a certain way, the most traditionally musical part of the entire.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. Now that you mentioned that, that's a super really interesting point on this, is that it maybe is the most kind of traditional classical musical moment in the film, because all the other ones incorporate, I think, a way more kind of silly and goofy and kind of non-traditional approach to their kind of storytelling musical moments. This one very much is more in line with a classic musical.
So from here, we move on. She falls through the roof of the goat house, lands very conveniently on a cushion, and looks up to see the three men, who she immediately tells to leave. This is, like you were saying, it's really interesting how quickly this movie just goes through things. In a lot of other movies, you'd have, the guys hidden for longer. You would have her knowing but not telling anyone that she knows they're there for longer. But in this one, within maybe 10 or 15 minutes, they're hidden. Donna finds out they're hidden, and Donna then confronts them, accidentally, but confronts them about it. So she kicks them out of the goat house. They go off to stay in Bill's boat, because boats are like little houses. And she then runs back to her friends, the Dynamos, and they get her to open up about how she's feeling through two songs. We get Chiquita, you know what I'm saying. You know the words coming out of my mouth.
You've seen the movie.
Yeah, you know. If you're listening to this podcast, first of all, thank you. Hello.
Just right off the bat.
I appreciate you.
You've seen it.
I appreciate you listening through my stammering.
Made it 15 minutes in the podcast. We're really happy about that, guys.
Yeah, we are. Also, if you're listening to this and you haven't watched the movie,
bold choice.
Why?
Why are you still
That's a decision.
Here?
I realize a lot of this movie has to do with non-narrative elements to it. It is a very much visual thing that you will still appreciate whether you know the story or not. But why spoil it for yourself? Go watch the movie. Come back. Hear our thoughts. Be able to understand what I'm saying with the actual knowledge of the film instead of just trying to piece together through my awkward stammering. Sounds good, right? Right? Yeah. Yeah, so Chiquitita flows into Dancing Queen, and Tanya and Rosie raise Donna's spirits about the men being there. She has her empowerment moment. They all march through the streets of this little Greek island people join them, and they end up on the pier where a bunch of people jump in the ocean. Do they jump in the ocean in this one? Or is that... Yeah. No. I don't know. You get it. Here's the thing with Dancing Queen, though. This is the song where every time I'm watching this movie, I can so clearly tell it's based on a play. Because this entire number is such a play sequence. It's like gathering the whole group, lining them all up on that pier. That is, like, I can picture how that's structured in a Broadway musical, and like a West End musical, technically, because it would open on the West End, but I'm American, so deal with it. That's just like the first moment in this entire movie where I'm like, yeah, this is definitely originally a Broadway production or a stage play, and they really didn't change that much.
I think that's true. I think it sort of works in this film. I would say mostly, like, more often than not, like, I think it works that it's just like a play on film, basically.
Mm-hmm. I entirely agree. Like, they reorganize enough things that it's broken up into more scenes, because you need to do that with a movie. But they kept very strong. They stayed very close to the structure of the play. But this is also a movie that, it's not that they don't care in the sense they don't want it to be a good movie. They're very like, we're just gonna have a good time. We're gonna have fun. We don't need everything to like perfectly make sense or be perfect or be perfectly
They're
structured.
Here to have fun, ultimately.
Yeah.
So they want you to have fun. They want to have fun. Yeah.
And that's like one of my favorite things about this movie. So when I say like this is clearly a play and they didn't do much to change it, I say that with respect, because they came in and they're like, we know what we are, we know what we want to be. This is the story we've been telling for almost 10 years when this movie came out in comparison to when the play was made, and this is the story we're going to stick to. And it works. Sophie then goes to find her potential dads on the yacht where they've been stationed off to, and they sail around Calicari, and they're telling Sophie stories of when they were young and they knew Donna, and they sing Our Last Summer. And here's the thing about Our Last Summer. I've listened to a lot of ABBA songs, like growing up. My dad and my mom were just really into ABBA, but this was one ABBA song that I hadn't actually heard outside of this movie until a couple years ago. And the way Our Last Summer works in this movie is so much more emotionally powerful than the actual songs, which isn't a knock on the song. Like, ABBA's a pop group. But I'm just personally a really big fan of, even though Pierce Brosnan can't sing, I'm personally a really big fan of just like how emotionally powerful this song is. Maybe I'm just a sucker for like reminiscing about the past, but it's real good. So that leads us on to Sophie then goes to find Sky, who's been looking for her while she was off all day with her potential dads. And he's like, hey, where have you been? And she almost tells him that she invited her dads, but then she chickens out and instead just flirts with him very heavily. Where they sing Lay All Your Love on Me on the beach, and it's so good. That's fair.
This is what I was going to say. Yeah. It's my favorite scene in the movie, maybe. It's so fucking good.
Yeah. It's very good. It's not... We're going to get to my favorite scene in the movie. Haven't gotten there yet. I know I keep saying things are my favorite.
The image of all of his bachelor party bros emerging out of the water to carry him off to the jet ski away is an iconic image of cinema, I think.
Amazing. You're completely right. Come on. Also, I haven't mentioned it yet, but Sky is played by Dominic Cooper. I didn't know that for the longest time. I've seen Mamma Mia fairly consistently, but when I first saw Mamma Mia, you know, he has like the longer hair, he has the clean-shaven face. So the next time I saw Dominic Cooper was in in Captain America, playing Tony Stark's father. And that connection just never clicked with me until I was at Comic-Con in a Preacher panel. And they were talking to them, and they're like, oh yeah, the new Mamma Mia movie's coming out. And he's like, yeah, I was in that, you know. And I was like, what?
I was today years old when I found that out. Hello?
The clean-shaven face really doesn't... It hides it, man. Yeah, I mean, it's more obvious if you watch Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again, because he does have the modern-day Dominic Cooper look to him. But if you've only seen the first Mamma Mia, it's very easy to not realize that's Tony Stark's dad. So she and Sky flirt very heavily. They're attractive people. It's a good time. And then we move on to Sophie's bachelorette party, where Donna, Tanya, and Rosie reunite the Dynamos, and they perform Super Trooper because they were a little singing group back in the day, which is dope. Also, Christine Baranski is one of the only actresses or one of the only performers in this movie who actually has Broadway experience. So it's cool to see her singing. And then Sam, Bill, and Harry arrive. Sophie runs off to talk to them after Rosie, after Rosie kicks them out, saying this is a birds-only party. And while Sophie's off talking to them and having little hearts-to-heart with each of them, the men of Sky's bachelor party arrive to invade the bachelorette party, and everyone starts dancing. They're having a good time. They sing Voulez-Vous, which is great. All songs in this are great. It's ABBA. And as Sophie's talking to the guys, when she's talking to Bill, she learns that Donna was able to pay for this villa with money from Bill's great aunt, who is named Sophia, and that's who Sophie's named after. So Sophie starts going like, why would your great aunt give money to my mom? Like, unless... And she asks Bill to give her away because she's like, Bill's my dad. Clearly, Bill's my dad. Why does she think the great aunt knows when no one else does? Yeah, don't know. Don't really care.
Unimportant.
She goes back to the bachelorette party. Everyone's having a good time. Everyone's dancing around. They're singing Gimme, Gimme, Gimme a Man After Midnight, which is a song that I want to get back to after the recap, actually. And she runs into Sam and Harry. And at this point, through some sheer force of magic, and I love this. Again, all the absurdities in this movie are things I love. And when I point them out, I'm just pointing them out of appreciation for this film. Sam and Harry are both like, oh my god, I'm your father. That's why I'm here. So they all say that they want to give her away. She doesn't know how to tell them that she doesn't know if they're actually her dad. So she agrees. And then the musical number kicks into high gear. Sophie, in the hustle and bustle of watching her three dads dance around her, not knowing which one is actually her father, agreeing to let each of them give her away at the wedding, faints. And if this was the play, this would be the act break. And again, this is a moment where I'm just like, this is a play. This is a Broadway production. We cut to the morning. Obviously, Sophie is fine because this is a fun romp movie, not a dark movie about the perils of, I don't know. Rosie and Tanya tell Donna that they'll take care of all the guys, which is to say Bill, Harry, and Sam, so that Donna can focus on making sure the wedding goes well for Sophie, because Donna is a caring, loving mother who wants to just do the best for her daughter. And Bill and Harry almost tell each other that they think that Sophie's each of theirs daughter. Bill, though, thinks that Harry is talking about Harry being in the closet as a gay man, and Harry thinks that Bill is saying that he and Rosie kind of have a thing. But before they can clear this all up, Rosie arrives, interrupts them. We then cut to Sophie and Donna having a little heart-to-heart, where Sophie gets weirdly mad at her mom because Donna's worried that Sophie's overwhelmed and doesn't and just needs like a break from the wedding and offers to stop it. And Sophie's like, no, I don't want the wedding stopped. That's what you want. Which admittedly, Donna has expressed worrying about Sophie getting married too young because Sophie is only 20. But there's that little moment. They storm off, but before Donna can find Sophie and try and talk it over with her, Sam arrives because Tanya and Rosie didn't do a great job of distracting all of them. And Sam and Donna sing SOS, where they kind of express that they still have feelings for each other. And that happens. You know, it's a thing. But then we get to my favorite scene in this movie. And that's why I've been awkwardly stumbling through the rest of this, because I just want to get to this scene, where Tanya is on the beach. And this one guy, who I don't know the name of, comes up to her and is flirting with her. And he's been flirting with her, like, all movie. And he's like, hey, we need to talk about what happened last night. And she's like, no, last night didn't happen. And he's like, come on, you can't ignore the chemistry between us. And then she breaks into Does Your Mother Know? And it is iconic.
It's real good.
It's so good. I love it so much. So that whole thing happens. And Sophie finally, in the upset of thinking that Donna wants the wedding to be stopped, runs to Sky, tells him what's happening, and he's upset that she didn't tell him earlier, which is fair.
Yeah.
It's fair. I get it. He feels like you're using this wedding as an excuse to bring these guys here. Do you even want to get married? So there's a lot of wedding drama happening at this point. But we kind of cut away from this and just get right on with the wedding again. So Donna is helping Sophie get dressed for the wedding. They have another song, Slipping Through My Fingers, which is beautiful and makes my mom cry every time we watch this movie together. And it's this really just nice, sweet mother-daughter song where we are reminded that, this is a small village. And for a long time, Sophie and Donna have just kind of had each other. And it's beautiful, and I love it. And then we had this beautiful moment in the culmination of that where Sophie says, she tells Donna she wants her to be the one to give her away, and she kind of realizes all this time trying to figure out who her dad is, her mom's really the one who's cared about her and been there for her, and she doesn't need a dad giving her away when she hasn't known a dad her entire life. So we have...
Strong, independent woman doesn't need no man.
Yes.
Exactly.
So we finally get to the actual wedding. The bridal party is walking to the chapel up an absurd amount of stairs. Like, it's beautiful, but that is so many steps. And Sophie's on an animal. She's on a live animal walking up these steps. It's a lot. But while Sophie is being led up there, Sam intercepts Donna again and talks about how much pain he has in not being with her. But she's like, you think you're in pain? And then she sings about how much pain it was for her to lose him when he, screwed her over. And she sings The Winner Takes It All, which is also great. All the songs are great. Again, it's ABBA. So finally, we get to the actual wedding in the little church. Sophie and Donna walk down the aisle. Music plays. It's a whole time. And Donna decides that she needs to be honest with Sophie, and she tells her, hey, so your dad's here. And Sophie's like, I know. And then Donna's like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah. So it's at this point that all three of the men also realize that no one knows which of them is the dad, that any of them could be. But there's this really sweet moment where they all decide they don't need to have a paternity test. They don't need to have it figured out. They all care about Sophie. They all realize that they're only her dad, and that they only could be her dad in so many ways anyway, because they didn't raise her. They weren't there all that time. And they agree to each be partly her dad, which is cute. And then Sophie has this little moment where she realizes, let's not get married right now. She doesn't need a wedding to love Sky, and she does love Sky, and they want to travel, so let's just travel. But far be it from Sam to let money be spent? I don't know. But Sam's like, hey, this whole thing's happening. People are up here. Donna, I love you. I'm divorced now. So the woman you thought the woman I cheated on to be with you originally, like, we're not together anymore. I'm available. I'm Pierce Brosnan. I may not be able to sing, but I was James Bond, so, like...
I was James Bond, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, I'm hot.
Got that going on.
But, no, like, seriously...
He's
still very attractive. What the hell?
2019 Pierce Brosnan with that beard and gray hair can fucking get it.
Pierce Brosnan hit a point in, like, the mid-2000s where he just kind of became, like the attractive old man thing, where it's, like, not fully grayed, but partially grayed. I know there's a term for it, but I'm forgetting it right now.
Salt and pepper.
Salt and pepper, yeah. And he's just maintained that somehow.
Beautiful.
It is beautiful.
So Sam proposes to Donna. She accepts, and they get married. At the reception, Pierce Brosnan tries to sing again. He's not great, but it is sweet. And again, but I think that's like also a perfect encapsulation of like what we were saying, that this movie isn't always about like perfect singers singing. It's about anyone can sing. Like it's a musical about normal people to a degree, even though they're all ridiculously attractive people. So it's kind of beautiful because it is him genuinely serenading his new wife after their wedding, and I love that little moment. And then that's interrupted by Rosie heavily hitting on Bill with "Take a Chance on Me," after he expresses that he's a lone wolf, and she's like, "I call myself a lone wolf." Everyone proclaims their love. Sophie and Sky sail away, and our movie is done, which also means I can stop talking for a second.
It's the amazing epilogue too.
You're right.
Everybody dressed up, fireworks, costumes, great. That's also just has to get a shout.
That is fantastic. So, it's a nice way to like just cram a couple more songs in there that don't quite work for the actual story being told. I also like to think it might have been. Here's my hope, because I keep saying, "Oh, this movie is clearly still a play." I've never seen Mamma Mia on stage, but I want to believe that that was originally like an encore moment. Like everyone came out to bow, left, and everyone's like, yeah, we're done. And they're like, but actually, I've never seen a stage play do that before, but you know, maybe they did. Who knows? So that's the movie. Before we get into a deeper conversation about this, I just want to get everyone's quick opinion of the film. So Logan, I know you've done some commentary throughout the recap, but like, what do you think of Mamma Mia, having just rewatched it for the first time in a while?
Yeah, so the last time that I watched Mamma Mia would have been, I don't even know, 4 or 5 years ago probably. And for me, most, like, I've seen the movie, like, at least scenes from this movie, certain ones, like, 50 times, right? Because it's like my mom, my sister, and 2 of my aunts love this movie and, like, would watch it all the time when it first came out and like, the years afterwards. So, like, I've seen this movie a significant amount of times in the years, like, 2008, I guess, whatever, 2009 to... 2014 probably. Watching it again now, it's definitely that thing of like, it's a very cheesy movie in ways I maybe didn't like fully recognize at the time. Like it's super cheesy and like it embraces the cheese, it leans into it wholeheartedly. It doesn't try to act like it's not. Unquestionably, you like the movie way more than I do. Movie. Yeah, right. Like you love Mamma Mia way and like ABBA, their music too, more than I do. But like, I think what I enjoyed this time around was just like there is a sense of like fun to it all. Like even in moments where it's like, all right, that was cheesy and like not the best. It's a thing of like, but they're just like it feels like a movie where like they just took like a summer in Greece and just like had a bunch of fun. And while they were like, hey, like we should just make a movie now too. Like it just feel like everything about it just feels like very like fun and lighthearted to it, and like that energy kind of radiates off of it. It's like you can never be upset with the movie. Like you never feel like angry or mad watching Mummy. It's like, all right, like it just makes me feel like kind of fun and like they just had a goofy time with it, which I enjoy. I think some musical numbers work better than others, as we talked about. I think that like as a whole, the epilogue is like maybe my favorite part of the entire movie because it is just like the personification of just like they just had it's just like them having a ton of fun in that epilogue scene, which like everybody got together and sang a scene, and then it's like Meryl Streep screaming, "Do you want another? Do you want another?" And then them doing like the encore song as well. Like it just feels like kind of the entire like movie's vibe, which is like, hey, we're having fun goofing off, like put into like one scene. It works. I like the Pierce Brosnan stuff because it is like him being like, I'm just like a dude and like I can't sing, but like most people in the world can't sing, and it's still gonna give it a go. Also, he's Pierce Brosnan. I love him. I'm here for anything that involves Colin Firth, and so again, also here for that. But yeah, like it's a fun, goofy, silly movie that I think just kind of makes you feel like a little bit better when you watch it.
What about you, Chloe?
Oh yeah, it's just so much fun. It's fun. It's a bunch of people that got together. They sang ABBA songs, and they were on a beach while they did it. And that sounds like a blast. I want my life to be that movie. It's so great.
Be that movie right in Greece.
That's fair.
That's the thing.
I want that. Just like, okay, yeah, it's not, well, it should be Oscar worthy, but you know. It's great, and everyone had a good time with it. I love like the purposeful lack of effort in like especially like the flashbacks where like they just threw all the guys in a wig and like, hey, they're 20 years old even though those actors are like pushing 50. It was great. Oh my god.
Yeah.
And also it's like
it's also especially fun to see that looking at, and this, I know this isn't like a Mamma Mia Here We Go Again podcast episode, but like looking at Here We Go Again where they're like, yeah, we know we showed what they looked like in the first movie. Obviously, we're not going to have the same actors. We're also not going to have the same styles. Because screw it.
yeah, because you know, fuck it. Yeah. But also, the movie's like gorgeous. Cinematography. He's got some really good
that's
shots.
the thing. I love cinematography.
Yeah. Like, that was the thing I was mentioning when I first started going through the recap, because I sometimes, whenever I think of the movie, I always think about, like, the fun of it and the performances and the singing and all of that. But that movie really opens on a very cinematically powerful, like, well-done moment with Sophie in basically just, like, all blue light at night singing I Have a Dream and the one yellow mailbox. And that's just, like, is it a little heavy-handed? Maybe. Do I care? No. My quick opinion, obviously, I love it. Everyone can probably get that from what I've been saying and what Logan said. It's not my favorite movie of the 2000s by any means, but it is a movie that I think is really special and really unique for what it is. And I also just am a sucker for musicals. My favorite movie of all time is a musical, so here we are. But moving on, before we get into a more in-depth conversation about the movie, let's talk about how the movie actually did. So, Mamma Mia was the highest grossing UK film of all time when it came out. Like, ever. It beat out Titanic, which at the time had around 68 million, I think. Mamma Mia grossed 69 million. It now has been beaten by just a whole host of Disney things.
Also Skyfall.
Also Skyfall, you're right. Not exclusively Disney. It's also technically been beaten by Titanic, because Titanic re-released in 3D. But when it came out, it beat the original opening of Titanic. Seeing it beat Titanic and then not beat Titanic at the same time was a 20-minute long span of confusion for me as I tried to understand what was happening. But yeah, so it was the highest grossing UK film of all time. It also had the highest UK DVD sales of all time at its release. I don't know if it still does. It probably doesn't. I didn't feel like researching that. And critically, it has a 54% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is very low.
Super low.
Yeah.
Checks out though.
Guess.
One of my favorite reviews,
people like
not because I
fun.
agree with it, just because this is a ridiculous quote, is from The New Yorker, and it says, "The legal definition of torture has been much aired in recent years, and I take Mamma Mia to be a useful contribution to that debate."
Terrible.
He related watching Mamma Mia to torture.
Wow.
I mean,
Ouch.
I don't know what anybody would expect
Yeah.
from the New Yorker film
Fair.
reviewer. Like that's like that guy is gonna be out here just like the trash.
That's just the most New Yorker response to it, too. Interestingly, though,
Exactly.
Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again, which released this past year in 2018, has an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Does it really?
It does, yeah. And
Wow.
as someone who's seen both movies and appreciates both movies, I personally at least believe that this movie is narratively more cohesive.
I've not heard anybody say a good thing about Mamma Mia.
Oh, I
2.
love
like,
Mamma
not a
Mia
single
2.
good thing about that movie.
I think it's great.
No,
like,
I've not heard
I
anybody
actually
say
it's
liked
it's a
it.
fun time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Mamma Mia 2 is a fun time. I don't think it deserves to be 80% in comparison to Mamma Mia being 54%, but I do think it speaks to how we as an audience, since the first movies come out, people were able to just like appreciate it for what it is. Whereas when the first movie came out, there were a lot of reviewers who were trying to look at it like a traditional movie with traditional movie expectations, and they're like, narratively it's weak. This thing doesn't work. And the audience came in and bankrolled that movie. Obviously, I know, Logan, you said you hadn't seen it in a while. Chloe, do you know, like, have you seen Mamma Mia often? Is this a movie you've seen a couple times?
No, the first time I watched it was when I realized it was on Netflix, and I watched it like right before watching Mamma Mia 2.
Interesting.
So the first time I saw it was last
Yeah.
year. It was great. I loved it.
See, this is interesting because for me, this is a movie I've seen a truly absurd number of times.
Okay.
Because it's that movie that for me is like a great thing to turn on in the background. Or, oh, you have friends over and you want a movie on, but you don't want a movie you need to pay attention to. So let's throw on Mamma Mia. We'll have a good time. I've watched this movie early in the morning while packing. I've watched this movie late at night while high. It truly fills every role.
Fair enough.
So I know, Logan, you were saying your favorite part is the lay all your love on me. Do you want to talk about that more? Do you have any other favorite moments from this movie?
Yeah, so I mean, like, again, from that one, I think it is a mixture of the two characters performing it are just like killing that performance. Like, they're just having a lot of fun with it. I think the chemistry is like good enough, but there. And then it's also just like the complete absurdity of it all, where it's just that, again, like, fucking mer people come out of the ocean and lift him up and like then take him onto a pier where they start like performing a synchronized dance number and then ride off on jet skis over like the setting sun. Is like, what just and then she like told him, she's just like, this is totally normal. This is just like a totally regular like day on this island in Greece. And it's like, I just love, because it's like, it's again kind of goes back to why I also said like the epilogue is one of my favorite parts of the movie as well, where it's just like it ties in this sense of like absurdity and like kind of wonder, but also just like goofy insanity all into like one kind of ball that is Mamma Mia. And like it sometimes it doesn't work in the movie, I think, but like when it works in like really wonderful ways. And like that scene in the epilogue are ways where it's like, man, this really fucking worked because it's just so over the top and so goofy. And it's like almost like what the Joel Schumacher movies could have been in Batman, where it's like, man, like they were just really goofy and over the top and silly, and it could have been really great, but they mostly weren't. But like this is an instance where like this song and this number works really, really well, I think.
Yeah, that's an interesting point too, because I think that a lot of times people look at movies like Mamma Mia and they're like, oh, it's just a bunch of songs awkwardly stitched together. But in a lot of ways, this is just a different kind of spectacle that movies have become so prevalent for. And so many action movies are very similar to this, like the Schumacher Batman movies. And obviously those movies didn't do super successfully, but we have seen movies that are this kind of goofy, stitched together action fest. But when we see it as action movies that appeal to more of like the masculine parts of our culture, we tend to be like, oh yeah, it's like an action movie. It's fine. It doesn't need to all make sense. You're in it for the ride. And I think for those who do criticize Mamma Mia, they criticize it for a lot of the things that action movies are forgiven for. But I think that really all this movie is an action movie, but instead of action, you have music.
I see it. Yeah.
This has been Thoughts. So what about you, Chloe? Do you have a favorite moment that hasn't been talked about yet?
No, because honestly, I just came in here thinking, like, Lay All Your Love on Me, because that's, like, my favorite song.
That's the thing. It's fucking slaps.
I love... Actually, I think I
really
like
fair.
the movie version of the song more than the ABBA version, but I haven't listened to the ABBA one in a while. But...
absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Throw that on, sing along. Oh, it's a good time. And it's so ridiculous. I love it so much.
So that's an interesting thing that you brought up. Like, have you guys listened to a lot of ABBA personally, or is most of your reference for them through the movie?
It's through the movie for me.
I've definitely heard of ABBA. Like, I knew of ABBA before this movie, and I've heard of them, like, since then. But, like, I very rarely go out of my way to listen to ABBA, right? Like, it's that thing, like, it's just on somewhere, and I'm like, ABBA's great. Like, I have no beef with it, but it's like, it is not, like, my favorite band by any means. Like, I feel like you also like ABBA more
Yeah,
than me,
I was definitely raised with ABBA playing in my house a lot, so I have a strong attachment to ABBA. But it's interesting to hear from you guys, because I think there are songs that I like better in the movie than I do when ABBA performs them. And there are songs I like better when ABBA performs them than I like in the movie. But I've always been curious how that plays for other people. Like, am I biased towards certain songs because I've heard them from ABBA so many times? Because there are some significant differences with what this movie's done with some of its music. Like, Lay All Your Love on Me is kind of just a visual interpretation of their song, which is great. Like, it's amazing. I fully understand why it's your favorite scene. But there are other songs where this movie kind of reworks the meaning of the song in really interesting ways. Do you guys have any idea what I might be talking about?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I don't. I'm ready for
Lay
this.
it on us.
So I was reading this article, which I will try to link for anyone listening to this. I'm going to create a page with little links for some of the articles that I found relating to this movie. And it talks about how, in a way, Mamma Mia is kind of this commentary on ABBA itself. It's a Vice article, and it calls Mamma Mia the kitschiest, campiest, most important piece of ABBA commentary ever. And here's why it's saying this. Because there are ABBA songs, like, okay, do you guys know what the original, not to make this about my favorite scene, but do you know what the original Does Your Mother Know is about? This is interesting to me, because I was like you guys with this song, where even though I'd heard ABBA, I'd never heard Does Your Mother Know performed by ABBA. So until last year, I only knew the film version of it. But Does Your Mother Know is performed by one of the male singers of ABBA originally. So it's not an older woman singing to a young guy. It's a young guy, or it's an older guy singing to a young woman. And the tone of it is really different. It feels a lot creepier. It feels like this guy kind of condescendingly talking to this woman, where he's like, you're hot and I'm super into you, but I'm also going to be condescending to you. And you can't quite tell what age she's supposed to be because it's a song. So it's not explicitly bad, but it's kind of creepy. And I think one of the really interesting things that this movie does is reframe a lot of ABBA stuff through a female lens, because it does shift Does Your Mother Know to, instead of it being a guy singing to a girl, it becomes this older woman singing to a younger man. And it makes it far less creepy, which I think is cool. If you notice, when I was going through the creator, or the writer, the director, and the producer, they're all women, which is very unusual in any kind of major film, to even have one of them be a woman, especially all three. But reading about the producer who brought this all together, she does work heavily with ABBA, so it is kind of interesting to... I don't want to say that the creators of ABBA, or that the band members of ABBA, the men particularly were sexist in their writing or were sexist as people back then, nor do I want to forgive them for it if they were then by making assumptions about who they are now. But because they're so involved, it is kind of interesting to think maybe this is them looking back on their life and being like, hey, maybe we had problematic perspectives of women that, even if in the most minute way, because they didn't write the movie, at the very least, the movie is an interesting way to kind of not retcon, but restructure ABBA's legacy.
No, I mean, like, I think that's a really good point, right? Like, I think you can take some of the stuff that is a bit more problematic or whatever, or just it doesn't play as well in, 2009, and then you kind of take it and put a more modern spin on it, more progressive spin on it, more, like, feminist spin on it. Like, I'm all here for that, and I think that all of Mamma Mia as a whole is very much like a female-focused and female kind of oriented and, like, kind of triumphal film. It pervades like, literally to the point where, like, she doesn't get walked down the aisle by, like, a man. She gets walked down by, like, her mom, by a woman. Like, it literally, like, subverts gender norms even to the very end. Like, I think that, so hearing that makes me be like, yeah, like, that makes sense. They would do, like, that kind of twist on the song. And also, it sounds like it's certainly a way more fun version of that song than it originally was.
I mean, it's a female empowering film, so why would you put a
version
of the song where the guy is condescending to the girl? You want that. Just brings the whole tone down.
No, and we see it in other ways too. Like another song where I've listened to the ABBA version of "Gimme Gimme Gimme a Man After Midnight," but you don't always like actually pay attention to the lyrics. So I always think of that song in the framework of the movie. But again, in this Vice article that I was reading, they're talking about it, and they're like, if you read the lyrics or pay attention to them, the song is about a woman needing a man to keep her safe at night. It's a woman being like, oh, I need someone in this house protecting me because I'm like weak. And the movie reframes that from like looking at some of the articles. I'm using the articles as a backing because these aren't things that I specifically noticed, but I did find a lot of articles that were really interesting because it was women talking about, like, a lot of male movies will, or a lot of male-centered movies will have men talking about like their sexuality and like getting laid, and it's like fine. So when I watched this movie, I watched it with that perspective where I'm like, oh yeah, like Donna hooked up with a bunch of guys, and like Sophie is clearly sexually active with Sky but isn't married to him yet, and like that's fine. Yeah. But from the perspective of how women are supposed to be in media, that is something that isn't often showed with female characters, especially older female characters like Donna and Tanya and Rosie, because women tend to be relegated to much smaller, less sexual roles once they're past 35, 40, because Hollywood is a problem. At those articles and looking at those details about it to see that this movie really is a lot more than at least I gave it credit for. I always thought of it as that, fun jukebox musical romp, ABBA songs thrown in, big name cast of characters, you have a good time. But under that layer of, narratively not really caring about how logically tied together these things are, it really does have this very strong heart, whether intentionally or not, of being a different kind of movie and being empowering towards women. And that's really cool, especially not just to see that they did it, but that it succeeded so well. Because you see it like in superhero movies a lot too, where they're like, oh, a superhero movie isn't going to succeed with a female lead. And only recently have we seen Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel come out and say, no. But 10 years ago, Mamma Mia was out here saying, no, we're going to have like a predominantly female-driven cast centered around female characters. Our biggest male actor names are Colin Firth, Pierce Brosnan, and Stellan Skarsgård, and they're going to barely matter? Like, they're great, but they are not the focus of this film. Yeah.
The plot might center around them, but they're not the focus.
So, other things. Is there anything else you guys want to say about the movie? About what you think about it? About...
Yeah.
Corey,
oh my
what do you
so
think
much.
about Mamma Mia?
It's great.
I love
it's a really good movie, and I love the music.
That's Chloe's in review of Mamma Mia. So there we go. Let's wrap it up. No, yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it is a very of the time movie in some ways. I think it's very progressive in other ways. I think it's, again, like I said, really fun and goofy and silly. I love Ben bringing forward all this kind of other more kind of critical ways to view the movie, whether through a lens of like kind of gender subversion or just kind of a more progressive kind of outlook in terms of filmmaking, in terms of both the cast and crew. I think that's all super rad. Even like how it depicts like mother-daughter relationships. No, yeah, like I think it is ultimately like a movie that is just out to make you feel a bit better, and I think that it largely succeeds.
Judy Kramer, the producer who brought this all together, says Mamma Mia makes you makes people comfortable in their own skin. And I think that's just a really nice way to sum up how that movie feels. It's just joyful and optimistic. And a lot of movies aren't that way nowadays.
It's true.
Agreed.
Yeah. Before we go, I want to go over a couple more things just about what this movie is, because in terms of film history, it is part of the wave of Broadway adaptations that kind of, or not Broadway specifically, but stage musical adaptations that had kind of gone away, because if you look back through history, a lot of major films are adaptations of stage musicals originally. Grease is an example. West Side Story is a great example. But those all kind of died off in the 1980s. Movies that came out after that, even if they were adaptations of stage musicals, they weren't successful adaptations of stage musicals. They didn't do very well until 2002. Chicago comes out and wins all kinds of awards, does crazy well at the box office. And this is the beginning of, after an over decade-long dry spell, people going, oh, maybe we can adapt stage musicals into films. And we get a lot of successes after that. We get Sweeney Todd and the Demon Barber of Fleet Street? Sweeney Todd, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, we get Dreamgirls, we get Hairspray, we get Into the Woods, we get, obviously, Mamma Mia, and we get Les Mis. We also get some less successful ones like The Producers and Rent. But overall, this is the beginning of what we are seeing currently of there being more of those adaptations. And interestingly, Broadway also is starting to pull a lot from the film world. We're getting a lot of, I'm making this about Broadway now, I'm sorry, movies that are being adapted into Broadway plays too. So like we're getting Beetlejuice, the Broadway musical. We're getting Waitress, the Broadway musical. So it's interesting to see how these two industries have kind of become dependent on each other now. Whereas in the past, it felt like, I think, obviously I'm not an expert on Broadway, but it seems like in the past it was you make a Broadway musical, that becomes a movie, that was the path. Then it was just you don't make a Broadway musical into a stage play, or you don't make a stage musical into a movie. You don't do it. Bad idea. Disney owns all musicals. All hail. And now it's moving back into that kind of like Broadway and film mixing and merging and creating new things like Mamma Mia, which is just a great movie. So that's all I have to say on the movie. Any closing thoughts from you guys? Okay.
Take us home, Ben.
So,
bring it all around.
As a reminder, you can find me on Twitter at Mr_BentoBox and on Instagram at Mr. BentoBox. You can find Chloe where?
You can find me everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, all at EchoChlo. ECHOCHLO. That is my username pretty much everywhere you go.
And when will you be Twitch streaming next? I don't know why I said next like this is releasing on a schedule that we know. When do you regularly Twitch stream?
I don't have a set schedule, but I at least try to always stream on like Friday nights and Mondays.
There you go.
And
Find her on Fridays.
Sprinkling whenever I have time. So, you know.
What about you, Logan?
You can find me at LeftyLogie on Twitter and everything else. Also, you can find That Nerdy Site on Twitter, probably at That Nerdy Site, but I guess we'll figure that Twitter handle out. Edit that out if that's not right, Christian, in the future. I don't know what Trevor got, but like probably that. Like that.
You can see how organized we are. We're loving it.
I mean, it's a weird thing. Like this, it's just being recorded before like the launch, and so like some stuff I just don't know the info for yet. But like I think that's it. Also, like check the Patreon out, which I would imagine is also at That Nerdy Site. But again, don't quote me on that. Edit that out if that's not right, Christian. But yeah, at LeftyLogie, I'll be there. I'm sure talking about pizza.
Like Logan said, you can also please check out our Patreon. Donate if you can. Don't donate if you can't. Please, we don't need to make you broke in the process of supporting us.
Nah, fuck that. Give us your money.
Be broke. Support us. Give it to us.
Give us your money.
Please have food
right?
and shelter. Please have food and shelter.
I mean,
what's more important, Ben? Food and shelter, or these thoughts on Mamma Mia, the hit motion picture film?
That is
right?
valid.
That's really the question
I
you're
mean,
asking me to make that decision.
That's
in life,
valid. That's a strong
right?
argument. Logan, you are right. Give us all your money.
Thank you.
exactly.
All of it.
Yes,
The only
I like
sustenance you need is
That's
Mamma
fair.
Mia.
that Chloe gets it right here with that.
I got you.
Make that the box quote for this episode.
Like we said,
Yes.
That weekly film class is, or that wannabe film class, why did I say weekly? That wannabe film class is a weekly show where we talk about movies that we love. We rotate between each of the hosts to discuss a different movie that we love that fit a certain month's theme. This month, our theme is movies from the 2000s. Normally, this will be where I tell you what movie we're doing next so you can watch along with us, but we haven't figured that out yet. We don't know what we're doing. We're working out the kinks as we go. If you've taken this journey with us through all the kinks of this podcast, I just got distracted by the fact that I said kinks multiple times, and now my brain's in a bad place. Yeah.
It's a great band.
Sure, let's go with that. Anyway, thank you for taking your time listening to our podcast. We are still figuring ourselves out, and we appreciate any feedback, any support, any ideas you might have. Do you think we should have a user submission portion? Probably we should. Yeah. We haven't been able to do that yet because technically that nerdy site hasn't announced its existence. So we're in a limbo state. It's fun.
That's true.
We will see you guys next week, I guess.
Also, again, this is where the putting the podcast hat on here. Whenever this goes up, also be sure to give us 5 stars on iTunes and other audio platforms. Like and subscribe. Share it with your friends. Make sure you download the audio files. All the good things. Support us out here. And also, again, to be clear, give us sell your house, get in your car, drive it to a dealership, sell it at the dealership, and give us some money, all right? I see you out there, people. I see you, Mario Not Bros.
Now, before we leave, I have one final question. Chloe, if there could be a robot in this movie, what robot would you want it to be?
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's like, what movie do you want to see in Mamma Mia?
In this movie?
What robot?
What movie do I... What robot do I want to see in Mamma Mia?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question, Ben.
Thank you.
Can I just throw Megatron in there just to add some spicy... I don't even know what.
What song will he be performing?
Absolutely. Yes! Yeah!
I'm picturing...
He's performing... What are you picturing?
I'm picturing... Ooh. I said that hoping I'd have an answer by the end of saying the sentence.
Here's my pitch to you. Wow. Here's my pitch to you. Megatron, he's the 4th dad option.
Oh, there we
go. Okay. The 4th summertime fling.
I just want him to sing Super Trooper, but I also want him to be the 4th dad.
Okay.
Yes.
Here's my pitch. Yeah. During The Winner Takes It All, he rises out of the ocean behind Meryl Streep and begins duetting The Winner Takes It All with her.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I'm down. Let's do it.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
Thank you all for listening. This has been That Wannabe Film Class. We will see you all soon. We love you, and we love movies. Bye. Okay.
Bye.